Not only abandoned houses or old asylums hide paranormal activity. Sometimes, the most terrifying things happen in places meant for joy, where people come to dance, to drink, to forget. Places where flashing lights cut through darkness and music drowns out every voice, except the ones that were never alive. Today, we're talking about a nightclub that should have been just another dot on the map of Kentucky. But instead of fame as a music hotspot, it earned a different reputation, a place where reality cracks just enough for something else to seep through. Bobby Mackey's Music World is a venue people visit for fun and leave with a chill running down their spine. Workers hear footsteps in empty halls, shadows appear in mirrors, and some guests insist they're being pushed or touched, even when no one is near them. This isn't just a nightclub, it's one of the most paranormally active locations in America. And tonight, we're going to uncover what truly lives inside. Before we dive into this dark story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new real cases of the paranormal. Here, only true locations, true testimonies, and things that still terrify even experienced investigators. Bobby Mackey's Music World wasn't just another roadside bar in Wilder, Kentucky. Locals claimed it was a place that never slept, not because of the music, but because something inside refused to rest. The property had lived many lives long before it became a nightclub. In the late 1800s, it served as a slaughterhouse. Later, during Prohibition, it turned into a speakeasy, then an illegal casino. But through all these transformations, one fact remained unchanged. Every generation of people who worked here reported the same thing: a presence left over from the past that refused to disappear. In the nightclub's very first year, staff members began noticing strange occurrences. When the music faded and the last guests left, something in the building still moved. Soft footsteps across the wooden floor, the sound of fabric brushing against a wall, shadows sliding where nobody stood. Bartenders often mentioned that after 2 a.m., the air suddenly turned cold, as if someone had opened a door to the outside. But whenever they checked, the doors were shut tight, the locks untouched. Customers sometimes claimed they saw a woman in a long white dress standing near the bar, only for the figure to vanish the moment they blinked. Night shift security guards reported a sudden, overwhelming scent of roses lingering in the back hallway, a smell later associated with the legend of the ghost of Joanna. With each passing week, one thing became undeniable. This wasn't just a noisy country club. It was a place with a story that wasn't finished, and a past that refused to stay silent. The basement of Bobby Mackey's Music World was always the part employees hated most. Even in daylight, it felt colder than the rest of the building. A stagnant, heavy chill that clung to the walls like moisture. At night, that cold seemed to breathe. The structure below the club was older than anything above it. Long before the first stage lights or bar stools existed, this underground space had belonged to the original slaughterhouse. The drainage pits, the stone troughs, even the rusted hooks in the ceiling were leftovers from another era, one marked by blood and secrecy. When workers went downstairs to restock supplies, many claimed they heard faint knocks echoing along the brick corridor. At first, they assumed it was the old plumbing or distant footsteps from the club above. But the sounds didn't match the rhythm of normal activity. Sometimes the knocks came in threes. Sometimes they responded when someone whispered a nervous, "Hello." One bartender recalled dropping a box of glassware after hearing a woman quietly humming behind her, even though she was the only person in the basement at the time. Another employee swore he saw a shadow move across the far wall despite having his flashlight pointed directly at it. The shadow didn't flicker. It slid. Rumors began to spread among the staff. They said a thin woman with dark hair was sometimes seen standing at the far end of the basement hallway. No one knew who she was, but those who claimed to see her all described the same detail. Her head slightly tilted as if she were listening to something only she could hear. By the end of the second month, the basement was no longer just an unsettling space. It was a place avoided unless absolutely necessary. And every night, when the music faded upstairs, the silence below felt alive. The rumors about the well beneath Bobby Mackey's music world appeared gradually, like pieces of a puzzle no one wanted to assemble. Employees first noticed it when a renovation team uncovered a circular stone pit under several layers of flooring. At first glance, it resembled an abandoned cistern, but its history turned out to be far darker. According to local records, the pit traced back to the original slaughterhouse that operated on the property in the 1800s. It had been used to drain blood and animal waste, which alone made it disturbing enough. But as investigators later uncovered, the pit had also been a site rumored to be used in ritualistic practices by a small, unregistered cult in the early 20th century. Although no formal charges had ever been filed, scattered witness reports mentioned candles, chanting, and objects lowered into the well during secret, late-night gatherings. Employees who worked near the pit described the same sensation, the overwhelming feeling of being watched from below. One server said she felt a sudden wave of nausea whenever she walked over the area. Another claimed the stone edge of the well vibrated faintly, as if something inside it moved. The most disturbing report came from a maintenance worker who leaned over the opening with a flashlight. He said the beam illuminated only a few feet before fading into complete darkness, as if the darkness swallowed the light. When he pulled the flashlight back, he swore he heard a woman whisper his name. No one else was in the room. Even paranormal investigators, who later explored the site with specialized audio equipment, recorded low-frequency sounds rising from the well, tones too deep and structured to be considered natural background noise. The well became an unspoken boundary in the club. Employees avoided standing near it. Customers were never told it existed, and management quietly locked the basement after hours. No matter how much concrete was poured over it, the well never stayed silent for long. After the first strange incidents around the well, the staff of Bobby Mackey's music world still tried to convince themselves that everything had a reasonable explanation. But that changed once the phenomena stopped being occasional and began appearing every night, almost on a schedule. The first to raise the alarm was security guard Robert Henley. He noticed that exactly at 12:10 a.m., the stairway light leading to the basement would begin to flicker. At first, he blamed the old wiring, but one night he decided to check it. As he approached, the flickering stopped. Yet from within the dark stairwell, he heard a faint sound. Something slow, as if a finger lightly traced along the metal railing. Around the same time, bartenders on the upper floor began reporting something else. In the empty hallway leading to the service exit, a shadow appeared periodically. Not a human one. It was too tall, too thin, with unnaturally long arms. Several times it slid across the wall as if it had no weight at all, but the security camera nearby recorded no figure, only short distortions, as though the image were being squeezed by invisible hands. One night, a dancer who stayed late to clean her dressing room heard footsteps behind her. She was certain she was alone in the club, but when she turned around, the corridor was empty. Seconds later, a soft female laugh echoed from the darkness. Brief, but close. Close enough that she couldn't stop shaking for an hour. Toward the end of the week, complaints from musicians began. Several times on stage, the microphone switched on by itself, and through the hum of the speakers came the sound of breathing, long and low. Every night after midnight, the club seemed to shift into another state. By day, it was a bar. In the evening, a dance hall. But after midnight, a third version revealed itself. One the staff preferred not to talk about, yet one felt by anyone who had ever heard the basement rustle or seen a shadow that didn't belong to any living person. It was during this period that a new rule formed among the employees. If, after midnight, you hear your name, never answer. After a series of nighttime incidents, the club's management tried to minimize staff contact with the basement. But avoiding it completely was impossible. That was where drinks, supplies, and part of the technical equipment were stored. And it was there that the incidents began. The ones that permanently changed how the staff viewed this place. The first to suffer was waitress Sarah Hughes. One evening, she went downstairs to grab a crate of bottles and didn't return for more than 15 minutes. When they found her, she was sitting on the floor in a corner, hugging her knees and unresponsive. Later, Sarah said she had been walking through the basement corridor when the light suddenly went out. Not gradually, but instantly. In the darkness, she heard someone breathing behind her, slow, heavy, as if whoever it was stood extremely close. When she turned around, the breathing seemed to shift above her. A few days later, shift manager George Miller decided to check the corridor himself. He went down with a flashlight and had walked only a few meters when the beam suddenly burst into violent flickering. The light switched off and on erratically, creating the effect of broken frames. And in one of these short flashes, George saw it, a shadow on the wall, 3 meters away, but not belonging to any object in the corridor. It stood sideways, shoulders raised, head tilted, as if someone was watching him without taking a single step. After that, Miller refused to work night shifts. The culmination came with the disappearance of a technician named Andrew Paulson. He went down to repair a pump near the old well. 10 minutes later, a sound echoed from the basement, like metal striking stone. When employees rushed downstairs, the lamp above the well was swaying as if something had just moved the air, and Andrew's tools were scattered across the floor. He was nowhere to be found. Police found 0 signs of a struggle, 0 clues as to where he could have gone. The only thing one officer wrote in the report was, "It feels like he simply stopped existing." After that, the basement was no longer considered part of the club. It became a place no one entered unless absolutely necessary, and always in pairs. Because everyone knew, something down there wants you to come in, and wants you not to come back. After the technician's disappearance, police advised the owners to temporarily shut the club down, but they refused. They believed the staff's panic was caused by exhaustion, long night shifts, and the constant presence of alcohol. But it was exactly then that the worst began. Events witnessed not only by employees, but by guests as well. The bartenders were the first to complain. They noticed that the front doors would slowly crack open on their own, as if someone on the other side was holding the handle. But the motion sensors, new and fully functional, never detected anyone there. Then came the reports of a figure standing in the hallway between the dance floor and the restrooms. People claimed to see a tall man in an old-fashioned jacket. He stood perfectly still, as if waiting for someone. But the moment anyone looked directly at him, he dissolved, folding into the darkness like smoke. One night, security guard Jacob Lester heard knocking on the staff entrance. When he opened it, no one, only a strange heaviness in the air. As he stepped back, the door slowly, without any force, began to close by itself. Jacob swore he heard breathing on the other side. The breaking point came during a private party. A group of students taking photos near the neon signs accidentally recorded a figure that shouldn't have been there. On the video, behind the laughing crowd, stood a dark silhouette, tall, motionless, with arms hanging unnaturally low. It seemed to stare straight into the camera. The students thought it was someone from the staff, but when they showed the video to the security team, they froze. On the recording, the figure did not move like a person. The frames glitched, and the shadow jumped from spot to spot, leaving strange frame gaps, as if the camera couldn't register it properly. After that incident, many staff members refused to come in for their shifts. The club kept operating, but each night there were more guests inside than those who walked through the doors. After a series of incidents, the owners of Bobby Mackey's, pressured by police, the media, and terrified employees, finally agreed to conduct an official inspection of the building. Electricians, inspectors, and fire officials were brought in to examine every corner of the nightclub, from the basement to the main hall. But even they, practical, skeptical men, didn't leave the place quite the same as they entered. The fire inspector was the first to notice a sudden drop in temperature in the far corner of the hall. He described it as a localized cold spot, not consistent with ventilation. An electrician reported that the lights weren't flickering due to electrical surges, but as if something was intentionally lowering the current only in specific areas. But the most disturbing findings came from the basement. 3 inspectors wrote the same thing in their reports. Sounds resembling a woman crying. At that moment, only men were inside the building. After the inspection, the owners closed the club for renovation. But soon, the workers began refusing to continue. One claimed he saw, in a mirror behind him, the reflection of a woman in a blood-stained dress. Another said something whispered directly into his ear, even though he was completely alone in the room. When the renovation stalled for the 3rd time, the owners gave up and reopened the club, but with no expectation that things would improve. Today, Bobby Mackey's operates as a bar and music venue. Officially, the owners deny any paranormal activity, but inside, the same smell of damp concrete and old blood remains, a scent that cannot be aired out. In the corridors, visitors sometimes hear a woman's laughter that cuts off abruptly, like someone pressing mute. Locals say, "Here, it doesn't matter whether you believe in ghosts. What matters is whether they believe in you."